Did you know most women think about leaving a marriage almost 2 years before they even say it out loud? If your wife feels distant or she says she's love you but isn't in love with you, don't panic. In this video, I'm going to show you 4 science-backed steps to reattract her and rebuild what feels lost. Now, before attraction comes back, safety has to come first. Think about it. Your wife's brain is wired for security. That's the deepest need of the feminine. If she doesn't feel safe with you emotionally, her guard is going to stay up. And no amount of flowers, dates, or apologies will change that. That's why the very first step is what I call the emotional healing process, or EHP for short. This is where you remove resentment, show consistency, and create a space where she can lower her defenses. Here's a mistake most men make. When she criticizes, complains, or pulls away, they get defensive. They argue the facts, okay? Or they shut down completely. But the truth is, when she's upset, she isn't asking you to solve the problem. She's testing if it's safe to share what's in her heart. How do you rebuild that safety then? Well, you use I statements instead of blaming. You take responsibility, or what I call is extreme ownership, for your part without collapsing into guilt. And most importantly, you create what I call is a space of vulnerability. This is when you lean in, you keep your composure, and say something like, I can see you're upset. I want to understand what you're feeling, even if it's hard for me to hear. Now, let me share a quick story with you. One of my clients, we're going to call him David for privacy purposes, was on the edge of divorce. His wife told him flat out, I do not trust you. I do not feel safe anymore. Before coaching, every time she brought up the past, he jumped to defend himself. That's not what happened. You're exaggerating. And what happened? She would shut down harder. And when he switched to creating safety instead of defending himself, literally saying, I get it. I can see why you're hurt. I don't want you to feel that way with me anymore. Well, her body language completely shifted. She leaned in. Within weeks, she started opening up again. Not because he solved everything overnight, but because she finally felt safe enough to let her guard down. Now here's a metaphor that you can keep in mind, okay? Imagine you're trying to build a fire. If you touch a match onto wet wood, nothing happens. The wood has to be dry first. Emotional safety is that dry wood, okay? Without it, the spark of attraction has nothing to catch on to. So step 1 is to rebuild safety, because once she feels secure with you again, only then can desire start to grow back. Now, once you've started rebuilding safety, the next step is to shift her perception. And here's where most men get this wrong. See, men remember events like a timeline. This happened, then that happened, and then we move on, okay? But women, they don't recall events chronologically. They relive them emotionally. That means when she brings up something from 2 years ago, she isn't stuck in the past. Her brain is literally re-experiencing the hurt in the present moment. And if you argue the facts, you just cement her pain even deeper. That's why the emotional shifting process, or ESP, is all about empathy and active listening, or what I call true active listening. This is where you take the bad memories, and through our responses and through our actions, we start to rewire the emotional script. Here's how it works in practice, okay? Instead of saying, that's not what I meant, you say, I get why that hurt. I see how that landed for you, and I don't want you to feel that way with me again. Instead of debating her version of the story, you validate the feelings underneath it. Because feelings, not facts, are what form attraction. Let me give you an example. I had a client, we'll call him Mark, was stuck in what I called the roommate marriage. They weren't fighting. They weren't connecting either. His wife felt invisible because for years he brushed off little comments. When she'd say, I feel like you don't listen, he'd reply with, that's not true. I'm listening right now. Technically, it was accurate, but emotionally, it was just tone deaf. Once Mark flipped the script and started reflecting back what she said, things like, so you felt shut out when I was on my phone, huh? That makes sense. I don't want that. and I don't want to do that again. That's when her walls started to come down. Not because he agreed with every detail, okay, but because she finally felt understood. There's a difference between acknowledgement and agreeing. Here's a metaphor that I'm going to use just to kind of make this a little clearer. Imagine she's carrying a backpack filled with heavy bricks. Each brick is a moment of dismissal, a time she didn't feel heard, a time her feelings were minimized. Every little thing adds weight. Empathy is how you start taking bricks out of that backpack, and it gets lighter. She starts feeling free enough to move towards you again. So step 2 is this. Don't argue the story. Feel into the emotion. When she sees you listening, reflecting, and validating instead of defending, her perception of the past shifts, and suddenly the future looks possible again. All right, so we built safety, we started shifting her perception. Now it's time to rekindle the bond. And here's the truth. Attraction isn't just about chemistry. It's about emotional investment over time. Actually, in the Heroic Husband book, I break down that equation. Positive emotions plus shared experiences. That's what creates a deep bond. I call this the emotional bonding process, or EBP for short. And the key here is intentionality. You're not just checking boxes like, okay, took her on a date, done. That robotic approach kills connection. There's no pasión. This is about stacking small wins, adding positive deposits back into what I call is her love bank. Now, how do you do it? You plan meaningful dates that connect back to who you were when you first met. You show appreciation for the little things she does. Say it, write it, act it. You add physical affection back in. Simple touches like holding onto her hand or holding onto her lower of her back. Small things like that. And you create new memories that remind her, this is why we're together. So let me share this story with you. A client of mine, call him Eric, had fallen into the trap of routine, a trap of complacency. He worked, he came home, ate dinner, scrolled his phone, went to bed. And his wife felt like she was living with a coworker, not a partner. He thought date night meant booking the same restaurant once a month, sitting in silence, rushing home. He was technically doing it, right? But it felt dead. Felt more of obligation, not choice, where true burning passion and desire lies. When he finally broke that pattern, that's when things shifted. One night, instead of dinner, he surprised her with local tickets to a jazz show they used to go to when they were dating. Another weekend, instead of just sitting on the couch, he grabbed her for a last-minute drive just to watch the sunset. And you know what? Her body language completely changed. She laughed more. She leaned in. That spark wasn't gone. It was just buried under years of routine. And also her saying, it's done, it's over with. But he didn't believe that for a second. So here's a metaphor that makes this like extremely simple. And I'm pretty big on metaphors, so it kind of cements in your brain. Imagine your marriage is like a garden. If you never water it, never pull the weeds, it looks dead. But the roots are still alive. Add water, sunlight, and care consistently, and the same garden starts to bloom again. Shared experiences are that water and sunlight. So step 3 is to be intentional. Don't just check the boxes, okay? Invest in quality time, novelty, and appreciation. Because every little moment you create together is another deposit into her love bank. And eventually, the balance tips back towards love and connection and desire. And you start seeing those positive dividends. Now, the last step, and maybe, honestly, the most important, rebuilding trust. So here's the principle. Trust equals words plus consistent action over time. Everyone always seems to forget that. If your words and actions don't line up, attraction dies. And the feminine needs that so that she feels safe in your masculine and can lean into your masculine. But when that matches day in and day out, that's when desire starts to flourish again. The mistake most men make here is they think trust comes back through big, dramatic gestures. The weekend getaway, the expensive gifts, the emotional apology. Look, here's the truth. Trust is not built in grand moments. It's built in the small, repeated follow-throughs. It's showing up when you said you would. It's following through on the little promises, like fixing the sink when you said it'd be fixed. It's being transparent about what you're doing and why. And it's owning your mistakes without excuses, then showing change in your behavior, not just your words. Let me give you a couple of quick stories, okay? I had one guy that we worked with, we'll call him Jason. He was the sorry guy, cheapened his words, okay? We're all about making sure that your words are very potent. And every time his wife called him out, he'd apologize. I'm sorry I was late. I'm sorry I didn't follow through. I'm sorry I'm sapped at you. But he never actually, after a while, his words were like Monopoly money, colorful, but worthless. His wife didn't feel safe, and she eventually said, I can't take your apology seriously anymore. Now compare that to another client. Let's call him Chris. He was in the same boat at first. Lots of mistakes, lots of broken trust. But instead of leaning on apologies, he started stacking consistent action. He said, I'll be home by 6, and he was. He said, I'll handle bedtime tonight, and he did. He said, I'll work on my tone when we argue, and actually paused, breathed, and responded differently. He didn't react. Within weeks, his wife's body language shifted. She went from eye rolls, crossed arms, to softening, leaning in, even initiating touch again. And that's because his actions finally matched his words. Here's a metaphor to just hammer this home and make this clear. Rebuilding trust is like repairing a credit score. You don't fix years of missed payments with one big deposit. You fix it by consistently paying on time every month without fail. Over time, the record speaks for itself and the confidence comes back. So step 4 is this. Forget about the big show. Focus on stacking the small wins. Be transparent. Be reliable. Be patient. Because when your wife sees your words and actions finally lined up, day after day, that's when respect comes back. And respect is the soil that attraction grows in. So let's kind of wrap this up, okay? You've learned the 4 science-backed steps to reattract your wife. Rebuild safety through emotional healing, because without safety, desire can't grow. Shift her perception with empathy and active listening, because women don't relive events logically, they relive them emotionally. Rekindle a bond through shared experiences, because love is built through positive emotion and meaningful memories. Regain trust through consistent action, because attraction only lives when words and actions match. That's what allows the feminine to lean into your masculine. Here's what I want you to hear, loud and clear. It's not too late. I've seen many men on the brink of divorce turn things around by taking these steps seriously. Your wife doesn't want more talk. She wants to feel change in your presence. And when you show up consistently day after day, she can't help but notice. So if you're tired of guessing, tired of walking on eggshells, tired of wondering if it's already too late, I want to invite you to take the next step. Book a call with me and my team. On that call, we'll map out exactly where you're at, what's been holding your marriage back, and the personalized steps that you can take starting this week to shift everything. And brother, you don't have to lose your wife, your kids, or your family you've built. You can lead your marriage again. And it starts with one decisive action right now. Click that link below, book your call, and let's get to work.